October 9th, 1988. Time Eases Korean War, POW's Pain, by Marlowe Church, The Press Enterprise, Corona. Robert Stringer's distinguished and athletic looks mask his 60 years, along with a secret that he has tried not let overshadow a productive life. Until now, only 2 or 3 people knew Stringer survived a brutal 3-year stint as a prisoner during the Korean War. Yet, Stringer perfectly fits a certain and unusual profile identified by the Veterans Administration for Korean War POWs. Few of the 3,000 survivors of brutal POW camps talk openly about their experiences during the Korean War. Stringer is no exception. He is far from antisocial, but happily lives by himself on a remote 30-acre ranch in the foothills south of Corona. It is protected by a secure fence and a rifle he keeps handy in his rustic cabin. He has little use for the VA, although he is mellowing somewhat. He is independent and highly resourceful. He built his ranch himself and enjoys his privacy without the telephone, electricity, or running water that inevitably bring noise and interruptions. He has coped with his war injuries and does not complain. The reason I came back is that in combat I never thought I would die. I always knew I would come back because I wanted to see my high school sweetheart. He is extremely loyal to his fellow prisoners. An uncommon bond and camaraderie now is a result of their imprisonment and torture. He is distrustful of strangers and until a few years ago had a seething hatred for turncoat American prisoners who collaborated with their communist captors. Stringer's story is similar to those of other Korean War prisoners in one respect. They all were survivors. And now the forgotten ones, as Korean War veterans are now called, are being recognized for their triumphs over incredible odds. A native of Kansas, Stringer moved with his family to Riverside's La Sierra area when he was 15 and joined the Army after high school in 1949 so he could visit West Germany. Instead, Stringer found himself stationed in Japan in a mortar platoon with the 1st Cavalry Division. When the North Koreans crossed the 38th parallel on June 25, 1950, Stringer and his division were moved to South Korea to counter the offensive. The fierce fighting Stringer experienced reached a horrible climax on October 25th when hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops surrounded American and UN forces to begin a push southward in support of the nearly defeated North Koreans. "I remember that night," he said. "We were just issued our winter clothing. It was about 9 p.m., and I heard this bugle, then another and another, like they were coming from the spokes of a wagon wheel. Everything got quiet. Suddenly, there were solid tracers in the sky. The fighting lasted until Stringer was the only survivor of his company of more than 100 men, and all ammunition had run out. The overrun division was in retreat, with every surviving soldier told to fend for himself and head south. For 5 days, Stringer hid during the day and slipped through the countryside at night. He was fed and his clothes cleaned by members of a North Korean family who risked their lives to help him. He narrowly escaped several times, coming within several feet of roving Chinese patrols. His luck ran out on November 1st when he tried to slip around a Chinese unit that had captured and was driving U.S. Army vehicles. A Chinese soldier had his weapon trained on him. I just raised my arms. It was either die then or take a chance on living. Stringer was fortunate because he was captured by Chinese soldiers who had never seen a Caucasian. He ended up arm wrestling with Chinese soldiers who treated him as a trophy of war. the mood changed to hostility when Stringer was turned over to a Chinese unit moving other captured Americans northward. Traveling 30 kilometers during the night and hiding from UN forces during the day, the nearly 400 prisoners braved minus 60-degree weather for 5 days as they headed north. Stragglers were executed. Stringer carried a wounded American doctor with a freckled face whom he only knew as Mac. The trek over ice, bearing the wounded man, caused Stringer to experience permanent back problems. Once at Camp 5 on the Yalu River, the POWs were segregated by race and rank. A lot started dying. There was little food and no medicine. Inside a 10-foot square shack, the 12 or more prisoners every 10 minutes would shift men away from windows that were covered only by paper. The farther back, the warmer they were. Each POW received 3 teaspoons of rotten food in the morning and again at night. The bodies of those who died were kept inside the cabin so the survivors could share their portion of rations. The food was horrible, but those who didn't eat simply died. Rumors of more food and the Americans coming kept me alive. Rumors kept us alive, said Stringer. Of the 3,600 POWs in Camp 5 when it opened, Stringer said only 600 were alive when spring came. POWs were tortured. The Chinese indoctrinated them and used deception to turn one American against another. Civilian Koreans were tortured and executed when they tried to help the prisoners. Conditions improved after the first year as the UN forces and communists tried to negotiate an end to the war. Stringer began a career as a POW barber, something he did with great success for years after the war. After 33 months, Stringer was repatriated. For every American, 11 of them. Me for 11, he said with a chuckle. The reason I came back is that in combat, I never thought I would die. I always knew I would come back because I wanted to see my high school sweetheart. Stringer remembers one poignant event upon his release. When I left that camp, I looked back. It was strange, but it had been my home. I lived there so long. Stringer, who had lost 100 pounds and suffered from numerous illnesses, was issued a pair of jeans because a uniform could not be found to fit him. He was discharged in his jeans, sent home on a troop ship to San Francisco, and began years of difficult adjustment without counseling or medical help from the government. His high school sweetheart had married. He couldn't find work, and he would spend years nursing his own injuries. For 3 years, I couldn't eat sweets because they would make me so sick. Stringer returned to his barbering and enjoyed a successful career, but his personal life took a strange twist. Shortly after returning and learning his sweetheart had married, Stringer said he was driving his newly bought car near Arlington and Magnolia Avenues in Riverside when he spotted a beautiful young woman waiting for a bus. It was 105 degrees, and I told her the bus won't come for another hour. I asked her if she'd like a ride. He took the woman to downtown Riverside. They eventually married and had 4 children. But one day a man came to their home and identified himself as the woman's husband. She never told me she was married. She never bothered with a divorce. Stringer raised his children himself. He admitted he could never find in another woman the trust he knew among POWs. I've never taken another chance on a woman. He admits he is mellowing with the years. Marriage is a possibility now, and he wants his children and grandchildren to have the combat medals and the newly authorized POW medal that he is entitled to, but has never received. However, the biggest change for him is his feelings toward the American war collaborators, some of whom still live in communist nations. I've changed my feelings on that. It's time for them to come home.